In a kingdom where healers shaped history, they're ranked from first class down to third. But outside the system, there's one healer bound by no rules. With powers beyond belief, always surrounded by powerful women, and always ready to heal if the price is right. The story kicks off with a girl named Lily gently rousing our protagonist Xenos, while she makes tea for them. In this world, a first-rate healer is celebrated as someone who can mend not just bodies, but the entire world. And the Kingdom of Hodges works hand in hand with healers to shape history. Their contributions have spurred the nation's growth and earned them high prestige. There is even a Royal Medical Institute where aspiring healers learn advanced healing magic, get licensed, and begin their careers. Yet somewhere in Hodges, an unorthodox healer without formal training makes his mark, a true badass named Xenos. Shortly after, we see Xenos wrap up healing a patient, who pays him and thanks him. Xenos simply says he'll heal anyone who can pay, and after the patient leaves, Lily asks if he's heading out on a house call today. He confirms and promises to be back by dark, while Lily mentions dinner will be waiting. Later, Lily prepares dinner when Carmilla stops by. Lily explains that the food isn't ready yet because she is working on a hearty stew. Carmilla, eager to eat, is told to leave it all to Lily, as she is destined to be Xenos' future bride. With that, Carmilla retreats to her room. Not long after, Zofia arrives at the clinic looking for Xenos. Lily tells her he's on a house call and decides to wait herself. She admits she came early hoping to have Xenos all to herself. Soon enough, Linga shows up too, keen on catching his attention. Lily gives her the same explanation, leaving Linga disappointed. She had planned to get close to Xenos in her own way. Zofia urges Linga to step back, but she refuses to budge. Their bickering is finally cut short when Lily reminds them it is her duty to wait for Xenos. Then Lo enters and announces she's here to have fun with Xenos. Lily informs her that he is not around at the moment and tells her to fix the door she broke before coming in. When Lo finally steps inside, she is surprised to see everyone gathered there. She wonders if Lily's cooking has lured them all, and they tease her by saying she's the only one who would come here for a reason like that. Soon enough, we see that Lily is nearly finished with the cooking and adds a secret herb as the final touch. She tells everyone that dinner will start when Xenos returns and invites them to join at the table. Lily is excited to share the meal, but before that she goes out to collect the clothes drying outside. At the same time, the girls can't wait for dark because the food smells incredible. Lo and Linga slip into the kitchen to sample the stew. They simply can't resist once they realize how delicious it is. They try to explain that they were just having a quick taste, yet they can't seem to stop, even though Zofia warns they'll get scolded by Lily. In the end, even Zofia gives in and takes a bite. As Lily gathers the clothes both outside and near the kitchen, it becomes obvious that the girls have finished the entire stew. Realizing they might be in trouble, they start blaming one another for emptying the pot. They decide to act as if nothing happened, but that plan fails, so they agree to make another meal. Zofia suggests that they start by adding fresh ingredients to the pot. Just as Lily appears and asks what they're doing, the scene shifts to the dinner table where the girls try to feign ignorance, but Lily insists they tell the truth. They admit that the stew smelled so good they couldn't help themselves despite trying to hold back. Their hands acted on their own. Soon they notice how upset Lily is. The girls start arguing and blaming one another, and Lily orders them to stop or else Xenos will be angry when he returns. She explains that she only wanted to have a proper meal with Xenos and everyone else, and the girls quickly apologize, promising to help her cook. Lily then reveals that she only prepared enough ingredients for today. Just then, Carmilla bursts in, furious that they've eaten all of her stew. Linga immediately apologizes, and the others join in. Carmilla demands to know how they're going to make it up to her. She even jokes about eating their souls instead. Lily intervenes and instructs them to bring her the missing ingredients, and they agree to do so, leaving at once. Later, Lily realizes she's used up the last bit of her secret ingredient, and Carmilla asks if she isn't upset. Lily replies that she isn't very angry, which makes Carmilla admire her tolerance. Lily adds that she would have cursed them if they'd not only eaten her food, but also drank her wine, and she wonders if she can still prepare dinner before Xenos comes back. At the same time, we see Xenos in town. As he walks by, he notices a demi-human clutching her stomach in pain. Soon, her master appears, revealing that she is his slave and demands to know where she went. She explains that she suffered a stomachache and went to a clinic for treatment, but they refused to help her because she had no money. Her master, annoyed that she tried to rest over a minor stomachache, drags her back to work. Xenos observes as her master throws her onto a grave, muttering that dirty demi-humans like her belong in a graveyard. His rough treatment seems to summon a ghost. Oblivious to any supernatural sign, he orders her to get up by kicking her in the gut. But she can't rise because of the pain. Still ignoring her cries, he tells her to get to work digging graves. He warns that she will only get food if she manages to find any valuables. Suddenly, the slave attacks him, and blood begins to flow. Startled, he asks what she's doing. It quickly becomes clear that she is possessed, and he tries to run away. On his escape, he runs into Xenos again and begs for help, explaining that his slave has become violent. Xenos tells him to step aside, while the man points at his slave and demands to know what happened. Xenos then asks the noble man about the last thing he requested from her. The damn tyrant replies that he simply told her to work as usual. When Xenos questions what kind of work that is, he hides the details by saying it was just some farm work. Changing the subject, he complains of his own injuries and begs Xenos to stop the slave, promising to pay him. The slave then attacks the noble, but Xenos intervenes and saves him. Xenos asks the slave why she is so angry. As she hurls stones at him, he easily dodges them. Impressed by his quick moves, the man orders Xenos to kill the slave. Xenos refuses, explaining that his duty is not to take lives. The noble, revealing that he is a noble himself, laments that if this continues he will die. He even says he would simply buy another slave if she dies. Yet Xenos remains firm, declaring that he will save every life he can because he is a healer. The deranged slave lunges at Xenos with a boulder, but he shatters it with his bare hands using some kind of enhancement. The noble watches in disbelief, wondering what type of healer he is, when suddenly the slave attacks him with lightning-fast movements enough to make Xenos doubt she's an ordinary demi-human. She then swipes at him with her claws, but he repels her with a barrier, noticing that his defense has seriously injured her. Still, the slave struggles on, fueled by nothing but hate, and Xenos realizes she's been possessed. He moves in close as she bites him. Surprised by the thought that ghosts can both consume and casually converse, he quickly deduces that some spirits can also possess others. With his magic, Xenos heals her wounds and expels the ghost from her body. Puzzled over what kind of farm work could lead to such possession, he then performs a full exorcism and declares his work done for the day. The noble, startled by how easily Xenos mended the slave's crushed foot, pleads for him to heal his own injuries. Xenos promises to treat him tomorrow, warning that if he waits any longer, he might not survive. The noble insists on immediate healing, but Xenos warns that the cost will be steep and asks if he's willing to pay. The noble hands over all the money he has, claiming it should suffice, but Xenos explains that it isn't enough. The noble grumbles that the fee is already above market rate, hinting that he'd suffer if charged illegally, but he adds that it won't matter since he knows Xenos works without a license. Surprised by the existence of unlicensed healers, Xenos comments that it's a shady business, not unlike grave robbing. The noble tries to act oblivious, but Xenos sees through him and declares that he'll deduct the cost of the slave from the fee. The noble agrees without objection, and Xenos proceeds to heal him, taking the slave's documents as part of the payment. After the noble departs, we later see the slave awakening. She's startled to see him and still suffers from stomach pain. When she asks who he is, he introduces himself as Xenos, explaining that he's effectively bought her. He then asks her name, and she tells him it's Tyru. Xenos orders her to remove her clothes, explaining that he spent a significant amount on her and needs to assess her condition. She's reluctant at first, but she still follows through, and he observes that her bile duct is blocked with gallstones and inflamed. Xenos then heals her in mere seconds, leaving Tyru astonished as she asks exactly what he did. He explains that he simply made a small incision in her stomach, removed all the gallstones, and then sutured it back up cleanly. She's taken aback that he didn't resort to any lengthy chanting or use intricate magic circles, and that his work left no trace at all. Xenos brushes it off, saying it's nothing extraordinary and that any skilled healer could manage this, but she insists that such a feat is far beyond what most could handle. Tyru expresses her heartfelt thanks for saving her and wonders how she might ever repay him. In response, Xenos reveals that he actually has a job for her. He shows her a detailed drawing of a rare herb and asks if she can track it down. Determined, she agrees and accompanies him. Before long, she finds the herb. It turns out to be the very same secret ingredient that Lily used in her cooking earlier. Xenos offers his sincere thanks, although Tyru feels it was a modest task and she had secretly hoped for a more significant challenge. But Xenos explains that his policy is to take payment commensurate with the work done. Despite her feeling that she barely did anything, he is content with her contribution, remarking that without her, he wouldn't have been able to manage. In a final gesture, he rips up her contract papers, declaring her free to choose her own path and do as she wishes. Uncertain about her future direction, Tyru promises that she'll return once she figures out what she truly wants to do. Xenos says his farewells, urging her to come see him if she ever gets hurt. Later that night, Xenos makes his way home, where Lily informs him that dinner is still not ready. Not long after, the three girls return after gathering ingredients, and Xenos can't help but wonder what they've been up to. They try to conceal the fact that they've already devoured his dinner, prompting Lily to decide to start cooking another meal. Xenos then retreats to another room. As he goes by, Carmilla catches a distinct scent of another woman on him, a clue that something interesting might have occurred. He tells her to be quiet, and Lily, busy preparing dinner, asks him to wait a little longer. But Xenos interrupts, requesting a cup of black tea instead. Realizing his need, Lily promptly agrees, announcing that she'll prepare a fresh cup right away. Back in the day, Xenos was part of a top-tier adventurer party. But one day the party leader Astan hurled a gold coin at him as a reminder of his poverty, kicking him out of the group. Astan called Xenos a worthless waste of space, insisting the party would be better off without him. Even though Xenos knew he was the glue holding them together, Astan wouldn't accept any counterargument. In reality, he had recruited Xenos just to use him as a human shield, figuring no one would care if the healer got killed in battle. Now that the party had grown stronger, Xenos tried to explain that their strength came from his healing abilities. Astan retorted that Xenos' self-taught, shady healing skills were worthless, and that any other healer could do a better job. Elsewhere in a dark alley, two slave traders were trying to restrain an elf girl so they could tie her up and sell her later. One of the women cautioned her partner to be careful with her since elves were rare. Keeping her in good condition would fetch a higher price. The man had already pinned her to the ground when the elf Lily refused to surrender without a fight, so she kicks him right where future generations get cancelled. Then she bolted. Her escape, however, was cut short when the man equipped with a bow shot her in the ankle. Lily collapsed, unable to run further, and the traitor quickly caught up to her. He attempted to subdue her once more, but Lily fought back fiercely, biting his hand as if determined to erase his presence. In a desperate move to free himself, the man ended up stabbing her. By chance, Xenos happened to be walking through that same alley and discovered Lily on the ground, bleeding. He demanded to know if these traitors were responsible. They snapped at him, telling him to buzz off since slavery was perfectly legal in this land, and, in their eyes, Lily was their property to do as they pleased. Legally, Xenos had little ground to stand on. Still, an idea sparked in his mind. He offered to buy Lily by handing them the gold coin he'd received from Astan. Most of the time they'd refuse after all. An elf slave was worth far more than a single coin. But seeing her condition and the fact that she was already bleeding out, they took the coin and left. After they're gone, Xenos walks over to Lily to check if she's still alive. Lily, resigned to her fate, tells him to just leave her be, but Xenos insists she isn't going to die. Looking down at her wound, Lily is surprised to see that Xenos has already healed her completely. She thanks him for his help and apologizes for the gold coin he spent to buy her, though Xenos admits he didn't really want to keep it, as it only reminds him of Astan. He asks if she has a home, but given her status as a slave, it's safe to assume she's broke and homeless. Noticing that she's also very hungry, Xenos offers to get her some food and clothes before anything else. Xenos ends up taking her to a nearby diner and even buys her a fresh set of clothes along the way. While Lily happily enjoys the meal, she's puzzled that he didn't order food for himself. Xenos explains that he isn't hungry, even though the truth is that he's really broke. He spent the last of his money on food and clothes for Lily, and after getting kicked out of Golden Phoenix, he's likely going to need a new job soon to avoid starvation. Just then, a man stumbles into the diner, visibly injured in his arm. It's clear he's been through some trouble by the wound's appearance, with a gaping hole and some mild burn marks. Xenos deduces that the man must have been shot by a magic gun. Although the man is a lizard person and his wound might normally heal on its own in a few days, the injury is deep enough that it needs immediate attention. Xenos stretches out his hand and casts a healing spell. Within seconds, the hole in the man's arm seals up perfectly. Startled by the sudden recovery, the man asks who Xenos is. Before Xenos can answer, Lily pipes up declaring that he's a badass healer. Though the man has never heard of Xenos before, he's grateful for the help and hands him a few coins, promising to spread the word. At first, Xenos is a bit confused about the payment, but then he remembers that healers usually get paid for their services. That sparks an idea. He decides to open a clinic and become a professional healer. However, since he hails from the slums, obtaining an official healing license would be difficult. That's why Xenos opts to become an underground healer. Lily doesn't fully catch what Xenos is rambling about, but if he's planning to open a clinic, she's all in to help him out. Xenos pauses to consider the idea. Knowing that starting a clinic without a license is against the law, he's not sure it's right to rope an innocent kid into such shady business. Still, Lily reminds him that he bought her just minutes ago, which in her eyes makes him her master. Therefore, she's bound to stick by him no matter how many rules he breaks. Though Xenos never intended to become her master, he only wanted to assist her. Lily points out that she has nowhere else to go. If he leaves her behind, it'll be his fault if she ends up back as a slave. After some thought, Xenos relents and agrees to let Lily join him. Overjoyed, she swears to serve him with every fiber of her being, though he quickly tells her not to make things awkward. Realizing that setting up a clinic also means he needs to sort out his own homelessness, Xenos takes Lily to an abandoned part of the city in search of a place to stay. Curious, Lily asks why he wants to live there. Xenos explains that he needs to keep a low profile, so the Royal Association won't catch wind of his illegal clinic. Plus the perfect price for his wallet that's been socially distancing from money. Although Lily can't argue with that logic, she's still uneasy. Knows that creepy monsters tend to haunt places like these. Eventually, they find a house that's still in decent shape, and Xenos thinks he's hit the stars finally lined up. However, the moment Lily lays eyes on it, she is terrified because this looks like a haunted house starter pack. She worries that if they get unlucky, they might even run into a wraith. Xenos, clueless about what a wraith is, listens as Lily explains that wraiths are terrifying undead beings capable of turning people into ghosts with just a touch. They step inside, but the darkness forces Lily to use her basic magic to light up the room. Xenos is surprised that she can cast spells at all, though he quickly notes that her tricks aren't very advanced. Once the room is illuminated, they see everything clearly. It's just as rundown as Lily feared, but Xenos stays optimistic. The roof is solid and the support pillars are sturdy overall. It's perfect for setting up his underground clinic. Nonetheless, they encounter one major problem. There's actually a wraith in the house, and it threatens to drain Xenos of his life force. Lily panics, while Xenos is more disappointed that the house came pre-haunted by something with no chill. Suddenly, Carmilla charges at him, but he effortlessly repels her with a healing spell that ends up destroying both of her arms. He isn't at all intimidated by Carmilla back in his Golden Phoenix days. Aston would send him into the labyrinth alone whenever he was in a foul mood, and Xenos had run into countless wraiths there, defeating at least 100 of them. It turns out that healing magic works pretty effectively against undead monsters. Returning to the matter at hand, Xenos apologizes to Carmilla for barging into what appears to be her domain, but explains that there are no other options nearby. He asks if she's alright with him moving in. Carmilla feels insulted that Xenos would even suggest sharing her space, the so-called Queen of Wraiths, and she summons a host of ghost servants to drive him out. Without flinching, Xenos casually uses a high-level healing spell to wipe them all out. Stunned by Xenos' power and beginning to worry he might exorcise her, Carmilla eventually concedes. Not wanting to fight, Xenos asks if she's willing to let him and Lily have at least one bedroom, along with a space to treat future patients. Realizing she can't beat him, Carmilla agrees to let them have the first floor while she keeps the second floor for herself. Xenos thinks that arrangement works out pretty well, though Lily isn't sure whether to be more scared of Xenos or Carmilla. By the next morning, with no patients around, Lily grows bored and asks Xenos if she should either go outside to do some advertising or maybe even kick someone's ass. Xenos, however, advises against it, worried the Royal Hospital might eventually catch wind of their operation. Besides, he's confident it won't be long before they get their first customer. Sure enough, a few seconds later, someone walks in. Lily eagerly rises to greet their first customer and is surprised to see that it's the same guy Xenos healed the day before. Xenos had been expecting him sooner or later after all. Law-abiding citizens don't usually get hit by magic bullets, and people like him would rather avoid the traditional hospital scene for obvious reasons. The man introduces himself as Zond and says he needs Xenos to check on his sister. Xenos agrees to help, and Zofia shows him a minor flesh wound on her arm. She explains that her arm has been acting weird since yesterday, and after one look, Xenos deduces that she was hit by a magic attack laced with poison. Zofia asks if there's anything he can do, but since she endured the wound all night, most of the tissue in her arm is dead. Xenos tells her it's best to amputate the entire arm to prevent the poison from spreading. Although disappointed at the thought of losing an arm, Zofia asks how much it will cost to have it removed. Xenos says she'll need to pay 1,000,000 yen, which immediately infuriates Zond. He finds it outrageous for such a simple procedure. Just as he's ready to start a fight over the price, Zofia intervenes and tries to negotiate with Xenos. She questions whether he really wants to charge so much when she's known as Zofia the Tornado, the leader of one of the 3 gangs in the area, a fact Xenos is well aware of. Yet, he refuses to do the work for free, especially since regeneration takes a lot of effort. Zofia is baffled, having never heard of a healer who could regenerate limbs, and Xenos is equally puzzled, as his self-taught method is something he hasn't seen in other healers. Not knowing what the standard is, he simply asks if she wants to proceed with the procedure. Zofia agrees without hesitation. Xenos then lays her on a table and prepares to amputate her arm. He conjures a magic scalpel, a blade of condensed magic that appears at will. It's super sharp and completely sterile, making it ideal for surgery, though most healers can't perform such feats. He begins the operation by continuously channeling healing magic to numb the area. He then swiftly amputates the infected arm and ramps up his healing power to regenerate a new one. Layer by layer, he rebuilds Zofia's arm until it's as good as new and stops acting weird. Amazed and grateful that Xenos successfully regenerated her arm, Zofia no longer objects to the price. She even promises to send her injured subordinates to him for treatment. Far as Xenos is concerned, if they're throwing coin, they can be as weird as they want. In the days that followed, Xenos was busy treating numerous patients from the Lizardman faction, so Lily brewed some tea to help him relax. Grateful for her thoughtfulness, Xenos couldn't help but wonder why she prepared 3 cups instead of 2. Lily explained that one was for Carmilla, though Xenos wasn't entirely sure if Carmilla would join them until he learned that she actually loves tea. While taking a break, Lily asked Xenos if he'd any idea why the Lizardmen kept getting injured so badly. Based on what he'd seen, he suspected that a turf war was raging between various factions. Then out of nowhere, one faction literally broke through the door. A pack of werewolves stormed into the clinic, and their leader Linga declared that she was determined to kill Xenos. She'd been fighting the Lizardmen for days, and no matter how many she injured, they'd always recovered, so she set her sights on eliminating their healer. For one, Xenos wasn't even affiliated with the Lizardmen, and he preferred avoiding violence. Yet Linga had already ordered her crew to kill him. Despite their ferocity, his defensive magic kept him immovable, unable to be harmed. Realizing brute force wasn't working, Linga resorted to demolishing the clinic. That plan quickly backfired, as the building was also Carmilla's residence, something she wouldn't tolerate being destroyed. The moment Linga and her pack saw the Queen of the Wraiths, Carmilla, fear gripped them, knowing a Wraith was among them, an enemy they could never defeat. Carmilla, infuriated by their intrusion, was ready to drain them of their life force, but Xenos intervened, urging her to calm down. He explained that he didn't want anyone to die in his clinic, noting that none of the attackers had even reached the 2nd floor. As long as Linga and her men agreed to fix the damage, he promised to let it go. Seeing that the Queen of the Wraiths had listened to him, Linga immediately began pleading for forgiveness. Then the next morning, an orc popped into the clinic like he owned the place, saying Lo, the big boss of the orcs, wanted a word with Xenos. At the same moment, Xenos saw this coming eventually, especially since he'd already handled 2 other slum bosses. Lo was the boss of the orcs and ogres, and she'd raked in a ton of cash mining mana stones with brute force, making her a pretty big shot around these parts. At least after he dealt with her, nobody else would dare cause trouble around his shop anymore, so he figured he might as well just handle it now. But before heading out, Xenos asked the orc if Lo was the reasonable type. The orc assured him Lo was easily the wisest, most respectable person he'd ever encounter. Hearing that put Xenos at ease, though it left him curious why Lo hadn't come along herself. The orc explained that right now, she couldn't exactly move. That sounded pretty serious, prompting Xenos to immediately hurry out to meet his newest patient. The orc guided him into a cave and introduced him to Lo. She was glad to finally see him in person. But before doing anything else, Xenos asked how she'd even found out about him. Lo explained the Lizardmen and werewolves had been running their mouths non-stop about some super secret healer they definitely weren't supposed to talk about. That pretty much ruined the whole underground part of being an underground healer, but Xenos would just have to sort that out later. From what Lo heard, Xenos could patch up anyone for a decent price, no matter how bad the injury, and she wanted to see if he really lived up to the hype. As Xenos approached her and raised his hand, Lo wondered aloud what exactly he was up to. Xenos calmly explained that since he couldn't see any injuries externally, he was scanning her to detect internal damage. Loa was impressed, noting most healers couldn't do something like that. Xenos, however, considered this basic common sense. It wasn't exactly helpful treating someone without knowing what's happening inside their body. Once Xenos finished scanning her, he noticed a lump inside Loa's stomach. and since he felt mana radiating from it, he figured it was a mana stone. Lo confirmed he was right, and said this stone specifically was enchanted with explosive magic, meaning that if she moved even slightly, she'd probably explode. Xenos asked if someone had tried assassinating her by sneaking the stone into her food, but Lo insisted nothing that dramatic had happened. She'd simply been starving, mistaken the mana stone for a rice ball, and swallowed it whole. But Xenos didn't see any reason to panic, casually noting that sooner or later, a mana stone would always find its own way out. Xenos gets set to leave, but Loa stops him, saying it ain't that simple. Turns out, when she swallowed that mana stone, she kinda chewed it up a bit, meaning there isn't much time before it goes boom. She's pretty much accepted that her mistake's gonna cost her life. Her only worry is her guys refuse to leave her side. Xenos wonders aloud what exactly Lo expects him to do, so she explains she just wanted him here to hand over her fortune. Once she blows, that's curtains for the entire orc empire she built, so she'd rather give all that cash to someone who'll use it right instead of letting it end up in sketchy hands. While digging around on Xenos, Loa discovered that even though he charges top dollar for healing, he has a rule about fixing up kids free of charge. She tosses him a key, saying he can use it to get into her treasure vault after she's gone. But Xenos never agreed to just let her go out like that. Considering she hasn't exploded yet, she must have swallowed the stone pretty recently. Without hesitation, he summons his scalpel and strides right over. Without a word, Xenos starts slicing into Loa's abdomen, causing her crew to panic at first, until he suddenly holds up the explosive mana stone. In just a few seconds flat, he managed to open her up, pull out the stone, and patch her back together, completely defusing the risk. But the mana stone is still ready to explode any second, so for everyone's safety, Xenos squeezes it tightly in his hands until it detonates. The blast is strong enough to level an entire city, but Xenos protects himself by casting defensive magic around his hands. He's totally fine, although honestly, it hurt like hell. He tosses the key back to Lo, telling her she doesn't need to worry about donating her wealth anymore. Lo is still trying to wrap her head around the fact Xenos really chose to save her life instead of grabbing the money. But he shrugs, telling her he only expects fair compensation for healing. An entire fortune would have been overkill. Loa decides right then that she really likes Xenos, promising him that if he ever needs backup, just say the word and she'll throw everything she's got behind him. She even offers to have her crew guard his clinic. But Xenos figures it's smarter to keep his distance. Having Loa's men hanging around is a guaranteed recipe for trouble. A few days pass, and Lily's moping around at the front desk, because lately, Zofia, Linga, and Lo have been hanging around the clinic way more than usual. Come to think of it, Xenos realizes they've been popping up constantly, even though none of them ever seems hurt. He figures they're probably just bored, but Carmilla straight up tells him it's obvious those women have a thing for him. Xenos can't wrap his head around why they'd fall for a regular underground healer like him, but Carmilla insists she knows exactly what she's talking about. Lily worries one of them might start dating Xenos and hogging all his attention, but Xenos quickly assures her he'd never date any of those weirdos anyway. Still, Carmilla thinks it's only a matter of time before those three go full-blown battle royale to see who gets Xenos all to herself. Xenos doubts things could ever escalate that far, but literally the following day, Zofia walks in with a fruit basket, casually mentioning she's about to declare war against the other factions for some vague reason. Right after her, Linga and Lowe's do the exact same thing. No matter how loudly Xenos protests, none of them listen. Carmilla finds this hilarious, jokingly blaming Xenos' irresistible charm for all the bloodshed that's about to happen. But Xenos really isn't cool with how she's phrasing it. The big showdown is scheduled for noon today, and Xenos can't let them murder each other because of him. He's gotta step in and do something fast. Over at the stadium, the three girls and their crews are already geared up and ready to start a full-on massacre. Just before the bloodshed kicks off, Xenos suddenly strolls in. Everyone turns to hear what he's got to say, but Xenos surprises them all by announcing he's not here to stop the fight. Since they clearly have old grudges against each other, he tells them to fight it out until everyone's satisfied. With Xenos' green light, the girls all agree to go all out. Whoever's left standing at the end gets to claim Xenos' stick as the grand prize. Xenos definitely doesn't recall agreeing to that last bit, but before he can object, the chaos is already underway. Zofia lunges first, aiming her daggers at Linga's neck, but Linga dodges swiftly, flipping out of the way just in time. Right then, Lo leaps in to deliver a flying kick to Zofia, but Zofia sidesteps, and a bunch of random bystanders get flattened instead. Zofia and Linga clash again, but before they can land solid blows, Lo drops down from above, nearly flattening them both. The impact sends Zofia tumbling into the orc section of the arena, prompting her to attack the orcs immediately, and soon enough, all three sides are throwing down against each other's factions. It's total carnage out there, with people getting sliced up left and right. But somehow, even after battling non-stop for 6 hours, no one's actually died yet. Suddenly, Zofia notices the injuries on her arms are magically closing up, and Xenos casually mentions he's been behind it the whole time. He agreed to let them have their dramatic death match, but he definitely wasn't about to let anyone actually die, especially since they're still technically his patients. Zofia feels pretty dumb for not noticing Xeno's trick earlier, but to be fair, none of them ever imagined a healer could treat so many injuries at once, especially continuously for over 6 straight hours. They finally get it. At this rate, the fight's never gonna end, which is exactly what Xenos wanted them to realize. Unless they can learn to chill out and get along, they'll never have any peace. But hey, if they're really dead set on continuing this nonsense, he'll just keep healing them endlessly. And yeah, he's definitely billing them for every minute. Now feeling kinda embarrassed, the girls finally understand how ridiculous it was to start a whole war over basically nothing. They quickly agree to put their grudges aside and start fresh from now on. Of course, they'll still fight over Xenos, but at least this time, they've promised to keep things strictly non-lethal. At the same time, Lily asks Xenos why he bothered going through all that trouble. Xenos remembers something his teacher once told him: a healer who can only patch wounds is third-rate. Someone who can restore the entire body is second-rate. But a first-rate healer actually makes the world around him better. Xenos doubts he's got what it takes to be a first-rate healer, but he still wants to try improving the slums a bit. Plus, if he'd let everyone wipe each other out, he'd run out of patients to treat, which wouldn't exactly be great for business. Or at least that's what he claims, but Lily sees right through him. She knows he's just acting casual to hide how deeply he cares. After all, if the demi-humans stop fighting each other and start getting along, his clinic's patient numbers would drop like crazy, and yet he helped them anyway. That's exactly why Lily likes Xenos so much, and she tells him this straight to his face. But of course Xenos doesn't really get what she means. Anyway, it's getting pretty late, so Xenos decides to head out, collect his payment, and call it a day. Lily's surprised. She thought he was joking earlier about charging them for all the healing he did during the fight. But nope, Xenos is dead serious. Treating that many people for hours straight is exhausting, so obviously he's expecting to get paid. Over in the capital, the commander of the Royal Knights is having a little chat with his vice commander Krishna. Krishna asks if something's up, and the commander mentions he caught wind of a strange rumor. The war between the demi-humans has suddenly come to a halt. Krishna's shocked. They've been battling over the slums for years, so it's hard to believe they'd just randomly decide to play nice now. Honestly, the commander isn't buying it either. But if the rumor checks out, he'll need to step in. The kingdom has stayed stable with the royals and nobility on top, because the poor, unfairly treated folks are usually too busy fighting each other to threaten the status quo. If they start cooperating, though, they might band together and demand stuff like universal healthcare, and obviously nobody at the top wants that. Rumor has it one individual is responsible for bringing peace to the demi-humans, so the commander assigns Krishna to handle the situation personally. Krishna understands clearly and vows she'll track down this dangerous individual and arrest him immediately for the terrible crime of promoting peace. Over at Xenos' clinic, he sneezes cause folks been talking about him. Soon as that happens, the whole place starts tripping, thinking he's about to catch something nasty. Linga jumps in and says he can use her tail if he needs something warm and fuzzy. Then Lowell, with a smirk, says she's got a spot that's even warmer if he's feeling cold around the face. Xenos doesn't even blink. He tells them it's just a sneeze and he still needs to fix up Zofia, so they better chill till he's done. Once her arm is healed, Zofia thanks him, but it's been a minute since she's needed his help, so Xenos asks what happened this time. She tells him she got hurt while pulling a job last night. Turns out, Zofia's been stealing from corrupt nobles and passing the goods along to the folks who need it. But during a break-in yesterday, she ran into the vice commander of the Royal Knights, a loose cannon named Krishna. This woman doesn't ask questions. She pulls up with magic fire guns and blasts first. Carmilla's got a bad feeling about it. If Zofia ran into Krishna, and Krishna gets wind of Xenos, things could get messy. But Xenos isn't too concerned. He figures someone that high up wouldn't waste time worrying about some underground healer in the slums. Meanwhile, Krishna is already in the slums digging for info. She notices the demi-humans aren't fighting anymore, which feels suspicious, so she corners a lizard man and demands to know who brought the factions together. The lizard man has no idea who she is, and since Xenos has been trying to stay under the radar, he plays dumb. He tries to walk off, but Krishna draws her gun and tells him she'll shoot if he doesn't talk. He stands firm and tells her to go ahead, he'd take a bullet before selling Xenos out. At that moment, Zofia and her brother happen to walk by. Krishna takes one look at him and decides this is not the time for a fight. She makes a quick getaway and ends up lost in the rundown part of the city. By sheer accident, she stumbles across Xenos' clinic and steps in to ask for directions. Xenos doesn't recognize her and says he's happy to help her find her way back. But right then, Lily walks out holding a tray of tea, and as soon as Krishna spots her elf ears, she instantly whips out her gun and shoots Xenos in the head. Lily's stunned that Krishna straight up put a bullet in Xenos' head out of nowhere. But Krishna claims she has a perfectly valid reason. Alongside her current mission, she was also sent to investigate some recent kidnappings in the area. Since Xenos is human and Lily's an elf, Krishna immediately assumed Xenos had kidnapped Lily, so she didn't hesitate to shoot first. Lily quickly points out the holes in Krishna's logic and explains that Xenos basically adopted her, and she's here because she wants to be. Krishna starts to realize she might have made the wrong call, especially now that she sees how happy Lily is. Luckily, the bullets she used were non-lethal, so Xenos should be unconscious at worst. But to her surprise, Xenos looks totally fine. Krishna apologizes for shooting him and jumping to conclusions, but she can't figure out how he survived without a scratch. Xenos casually tells her he just used some defensive magic to block the shot. But Krishna doesn't buy it. Ordinary defensive spells shouldn't be strong enough to handle her bullets. Xenos has no clue what she means, since his defensive magic seems pretty standard to him. But Krishna's seen plenty of high-level magic during her years as Vice Commander of the Royal Knights, and she knows Xenos' shields are at the level of a Grand Sorcerer. As soon as Krishna mentions she's the Vice Commander, Xenos and Lily instantly tense up, realizing her presence might spell trouble for them. Apparently Krishna wants to ask Xenos for some help on something important. To avoid any further trouble, Xenos agrees to hear her out, but secretly warns all of his clients not to show up while Krishna is there. Once seated, Krishna explains she's currently on a secret mission and needs his assistance. Xenos tries to decline politely, but Krishna insists it's every citizen's responsibility to cooperate with the orders of knights. Given how trigger-happy Krishna seems, Xenos is worried he might get shot again if he refuses, so he reluctantly agrees to listen. She explains her mission is to track down a certain man and arrest him immediately. She doesn't have his name or even what he looks like, but this guy is the mediator who brought an end to the war between the various factions. Xenos nearly chokes on his tea when he realizes Krishna is hunting him down, but he quickly regains his composure and calmly asks her why exactly she's after this mediator. Krishna explains that the Knight's orders can't let someone who has the influence to stop faction wars run around freely. She recently tried to violently interrogate one of the locals, but despite all her threats, he refused to say a word. In her eyes, if the slum residents are willing to protect this mediator, it must mean he's some dangerous criminal mastermind who needs to be taken down. Xenos carefully suggests that maybe this mediator is just avoiding attention, and if she simply dropped the investigation and left him alone, he probably wouldn't cause any issues. Krishna immediately asks Xenos if he knows who this mediator might be, but Xenos quickly claims he was just guessing based on common sense. Regardless, Krishna insists she can't just ignore this person because her commander gave her direct orders, and anyone with enough power to end factional conflicts is too dangerous to leave unchecked. Lily speaks up, saying Krishna probably doesn't need to worry, since the mediator is likely just focused on earning an honest living and wouldn't try to disrupt the nation. But the way Lily describes him makes it sound like she actually knows the mediator personally. Lily panics and starts insisting that she's never met him either. Krishna is clearly getting suspicious, but for the moment, she decides to let it go. It's getting late, so Xenos uses that as a chance to politely get Krishna out the door. But while he's guiding her out, she suddenly notices the bed in the corner of the room. Krishna thinks it's strange that Xenos has a bed down here, and Xenos definitely doesn't want to admit he and Lily share it because there's a wraith upstairs, so he casually tells her it's just a spare. Krishna immediately seizes on that and asks if Xenos would mind letting her use the spare bed. She's had trouble finding a good spot to set up base in the slums, so she'd appreciate it if Xenos could accommodate her until her mission is over, and of course she'll pay for it. Xenos knows there's no way he can refuse without making her more suspicious, so he reluctantly agrees, while Carmilla watches the whole situation unfold and finds it absolutely hilarious. Lily brews up a little green tea for their new guest, but Krishna struggles with hot drinks and starts carefully blowing on it to cool it down. Lily still feels jealous about this new woman showing up and trying to grab Zenos' attention away from her. So she decides to demonstrate her position clearly. She casually hops onto Zenos' lap and sweetly asks him to pat her head like he usually does. Zenos complies without a fuss, though he's a bit confused about why she suddenly asked for this. Carmilla, invisible as always, quietly whispers in his ear that Lily is obviously jealous, startling Zenos. But Carmilla just finds the whole scene way too entertaining to ignore. Determined not to lose Zenos' affection, Lily keeps clinging even closer than usual to make sure Krishna knows who's in charge here. But Krishna couldn't care less. She's still busy cautiously blowing on her hot tea. Eventually Lily drifts off to sleep, and Zenos gently tucks her into bed before returning to the living room to finish his earlier conversation with Krishna. He starts explaining the whole situation, how he rescued Lily from a group of slave traders who were apparently part of an illegal trafficking ring operating around the area. This detail explains why Krishna jumped to conclusions and shot first earlier, but unfortunately Zenos doesn't have any useful information about the traffickers themselves. On another note, Krishna has something else she'd like to ask about, given that Zenos seems to be a master mage who's perfected defensive magic. She's curious if a healer who put the same amount of effort into their craft could possibly regenerate an entire arm. Zenos is just about to comment that he thought regrowing an arm was probably something a decent healer could handle, but Krishna quickly says it's supposed to be impossible. According to her, only saints or the absolute best healers in existence would have that kind of power. Zenos wonders why Krishna brought this up, so she explains she recently fought Zofia and vividly remembers severely damaging Zofia's arm. Yet when she encountered Zofia yesterday, her arm appeared perfectly fine. Krishna's convinced this means there's a healer hiding somewhere in the slums capable of regrowing lost limbs. If that's the case, that healer probably holds significant influence among the faction leaders here. Krishna plans to restart her investigation first thing in the morning to track down this nefarious healer, though Zenos doesn't understand why she'd assume someone who heals others would automatically be nefarious. Actually, Krishna seems to have a pretty negative opinion about the entire slum, so Zenos casually asks if there's a specific reason behind it. Krishna admits she might be biased, but that's only because someone from the slums took her mother's life. Krishna's mother was kind-hearted and genuinely wanted to help as many people as possible. She frequently visited the slums, organizing events and providing meals to the people who couldn't afford food. But one day, she simply didn't return home. According to witnesses, Krishna's mother was attacked and killed by someone who wanted to steal her wedding ring. Krishna was devastated when she learned that her mother had saved countless people from starving. Yet nobody stepped up to save her when she needed help. That's why Krishna decided to join the Knights and become an unstoppable hero, determined to bring justice to the criminals in the slums. The next day, Krishna heads out early to continue her investigation, allowing Zenos to finally get back to healing his patients again. Shortly after, Zofia walks in with a minor wound on her arm, asking Zenos if he could take a look at it. Zenos begins healing her, but warns Zofia to stay cautious since they never know when Krishna might pop back in. As if on cue, Krishna shows up again, claiming she got lost and needs directions to find her way out. As soon as Krishna spots Zofia, she immediately draws her guns, prompting Zofia to whip out her knives in response. They briefly face off before Krishna asks Zofia if there really is some evil healer uniting criminals to threaten innocent people. Zofia admits there's definitely a healer in the slums, but he's nowhere near evil. She knows she isn't exactly a model citizen herself, but she can confirm there are far worse people hiding among the nobility. For instance, Zofia mentions that Krishna's investigating the trafficking ring, and after doing some digging herself, she found out the mastermind behind it is actually an aristocrat. Krishna finds that hard to swallow at first because the trafficking ring operates within the slums, but Zofia explains that's just a clever trick designed to throw off the Knights. Krishna's still skeptical, but she wants Zofia to give her the name of the person behind all the kidnappings. Zofia calmly states that it's a man named Kalendor. Krishna struggles to believe that accusation, considering Kalendor is well known as a generous philanthropist who proudly educates orphans, not someone who'd sell kids into slavery. Zofia shrugs, saying she never expected Krishna to trust her anyway, since Krishna sees everyone from the slums as criminals. But the mediator isn't like that at all. He treats everyone fairly and always offers them a second chance. Typical Krishna with her naive idea of justice. Furious that Zofia would mock her sense of right and wrong, Krishna immediately moves to pull the trigger, but Zenos steps in front of her, firmly asking Krishna to lower her gun. Krishna urges him to move out of the way, but Zenos refuses, insisting Zofia is his patient and he won't allow anyone to hurt her. He apologizes for not mentioning it sooner, but finally admits that he's the mediator Krishna's been hunting. Krishna thinks Xenos is just trying to protect Zofia by making up a lie, because there's no chance he could actually be the healing mediator. After all, he's already shown mastery over defensive magic, so he can't possibly be an expert healer, too. Xenos calmly replies that he wouldn't exactly call himself a master, but he's pretty skilled in both healing and defense, since both styles just require amplifying a body's natural processes. This explanation makes no sense to Krishna, and she still doesn't buy that Xenos could really be the healer. It's obvious to her that he's siding with Zofia, but out of respect for the hospitality he showed yesterday, Krishna decides to leave peacefully. As she walks out, Lily notices Krishna is headed straight toward the district where the aristocrats live, prompting Xenos to suddenly realize exactly where she's going. Krishna took Zofia's accusation about Kalendor seriously, so she's likely headed to his mansion to question him personally. Obviously, she can't openly accuse Kalendor of running the child trafficking ring, so instead, Krishna makes up a story to justify her visit. She informs Kalendor that there's been a recent increase in theft around his area. Kalendor agrees, mentioning he's had some trouble with the Lizardman gang lately. Krishna tells him that she plans to increase patrols nearby, but first she'd like to inspect his manor to get an idea of his current security measures. Kalendor fully understands her concern and gladly offers to show her around his entire estate. Krishna is given a detailed tour, and afterward, Kalendor asks her opinion about his security system. She praises him for his thoroughness, but something unusual caught her eye during the tour. She asks Kalendor if she could briefly use the restroom before leaving, and he agrees without suspicion, allowing Krishna to leave his office. Although it makes sense for a high-ranking aristocrat like Kalendor to have strong security, Krishna finds it strange that he's put so much effort into securing the backyard of his manor. Feeling there's something hidden back there, she carefully looks over the wall and quickly spots a concealed entrance. Krishna quietly slips down into the tunnel, and moments later, she's confronted with the horrifying realization that Zofia was telling the truth. Turns out Kalendor actually is the mastermind behind the kidnappings. But before Krishna can help the trapped children, he sneaks up behind her, grabs the guns she left upstairs, and blasts off her arm. He tells Krishna she shouldn't have stuck her nose where it didn't belong. Now he just needs to finish her off quickly and get back to his trafficking operation. But before he gets the chance, Zofia and Xenos arrive just in time. When Xenos realized Krishna had headed straight for trouble, he asked Zofia to show him the quickest route here. Kalendor won't allow any witnesses to leave alive, so he flips Krishna's gun to lethal mode and shoots Xenos directly in the face. But to his shock, Xenos is completely fine, even though the lethal shot definitely stung a bit. Panicking, Kalendor tries to run, but he drops the gun. Xenos quickly picks it up, leaving Kalendor begging for his life. Fortunately for Kalendor, Xenos has a strict rule against killing, but that doesn't mean he won't make him suffer a little, so he switches the gun to non-lethal and blasts Kalendor right in the head. With Kalendor knocked out, Xenos rushes to check on Krishna, who insists it's already too late for her. Her arm's missing and a chunk of her stomach is gone, and she's already accepted death, but Xenos calmly reassures her she'll be fine, though he's definitely charging her extra for this treatment. A few minutes later, Krishna is back in one piece, stunned that Xenos could completely heal wounds this severe in mere moments. She realizes now that he was telling the truth about being the mediator, but she no longer has any intention of arresting him. As far as she's concerned, he's the real hero here. But Xenos doesn't see himself as a hero at all. He's just a healer who kept everyone alive. If anyone deserves the title of hero, it's Krishna, since she was the first person who took real action to save these kids. Sure, she can be a little misguided sometimes, but deep down, she genuinely wants to make the world a better place. Zofia and the lizard men start freeing the children from the dungeon. But since the royal knights will arrive soon, Xenos would rather not stick around to deal with them. He quickly gathers everyone up and prepares to leave. Before he can go, Krishna rushes up and asks why he chose to save her, even though they were enemies just moments before. Xenos calmly looks at her, shrugs, and tells her he's just making sure she pays her bill. After all, she still owes him for last night's stay in his clinic, plus the extra fee for today's emergency healing, and he expects payment in full by the end of the week. Way back when Xenos was still a kid, he was just another broke orphan struggling day by day to survive in the slums, spending most of his time alone in some back alley. One afternoon, Bastan was wandering through the slums, sizing up kids to see who might make a good meat shield. So far though, he's disappointed because none of them look like they'd last long enough. Then Bastan notices Xenos sitting alone and figures he'll do just fine. He strolls over casually, speaking in a fake friendly tone. telling Xenos he's broke, starving and jobless, so he might as well join him for some adventures. Xenos, not catching the hidden malice behind Astan's words, actually thinks he might be a decent guy. Still, he's hesitant because folks from the slums usually don't get the chance to become adventurers. Astan brushes it off, telling Xenos that as long as he's got some kind of skill, anything's possible. He asks Xenos if there's anything he's good at. Xenos mentions that he knows a little healing magic, but Astan immediately doubts it. After all, learning healing spells usually takes years at the Royal Academy, so there's no way some random orphan figured it out by himself. But healing magic or not, Astan doesn't care. He plans to use Xenos mainly as a distraction if things get ugly. Once Xenos agrees, Astan quickly takes him out into the woods. Out there, the two face a wolf monster, and Astan gets hurt during the fight. Without thinking twice, Xenos heals him instantly. Then, when Astan charges at the wolf again, Xenos boosts his speed with another healing spell, helping Astan slice the wolf's head clean off. But Astan's oblivious, he doesn't even notice his wounds healing or his sudden boost of speed. Instead, he thinks Xenos is completely worthless. After a couple of years like this, Astan finally kicks Xenos out of the party. We know how Xenos has been doing ever since, but Astan's group hasn't had the same luck. Right after kicking Xenos out, Astan and his team headed into a cave for their next mission. This job's important because they plan to use it to win favor with the kingdom's nobles. The only problem is they all hate doing the actual work. Yuma grumbles, saying the sooner they finish, the sooner they can get back to the inn and drink their troubles away. Andreas is hyped because girls always throw themselves at them once they drop that they're members of the Golden Phoenix Party. Their reputation is unmatched when it comes to taking down monsters and finishing missions without a single scratch. Just as they're talking, the monsters they're hunting finally show up. So Astan quickly draws his sword, ready for action. He tells Guile to cast some defensive magic on him as he charges ahead. Guile follows the plan perfectly, but Astan still ends up getting his arm burned in the fight. Meanwhile, Yuma's getting completely wrecked by one of the wolves off to the side, so he's clearly not going to be much help today. Astan shouts at Andes, urging him to hurry up and cast an attack spell, but Andes takes forever just chanting the incantation. Before he even finishes, a fireball blasts him. Astan is stunned, wondering if his team was always this useless. It's obvious they're losing this fight, so he quickly calls for everyone to retreat. Once they're safely outside, Astan demands to know why his team is struggling against monsters that are barely B rank. Andes fires back, pointing out Astan didn't exactly perform well either. Guile brings up the possibility that maybe Xenos was telling the truth about healing them, but Astan dismisses it immediately. In his mind, there's no chance some low-class slum kid could ever master healing magic. Still, Astan thinks maybe hiring a healer could help, just to play it safe. A few days later, they're back at the cave again with a healer named Yuman. But right from the start, Yuman warns Astan she's not suited for battlefield healing. Usually, she just heals people in the capital, but since she has an adventurer's license, she agreed to come along. Yuman's curious why the Golden Phoenix would suddenly need a healer when they're famous for never getting hurt. Astan brushes her off rudely, saying it's none of her business. Guile asks Yuman if Yuma will be okay, considering how badly he got hurt by the wolves last time. Yuman says she treated him personally, so he'll definitely live. But his injuries were so severe, he'll never go adventuring again. You'd think Astan might show a bit of sympathy for a teammate permanently out of commission, but instead he coldly says Yuma wasn't worth much anyway and moves on like nothing happened. As for why this mission even matters so much, it turns out some noble named Lord Fennel wants a scarf made from a firefox as a gift for his daughter. If delivering this scarf earns Astan favor with the Lord, then as far as he's concerned, risking his life is totally worth it. Barely 2 seconds pass before Astan's big plan completely collapses when the wolves launch a surprise attack. Astan instantly leaps into action, yelling at Guile to cast defensive magic on everyone. But when Astan charges in, he can't even land a single blow on the wolves. The wolves retaliate with 4 fireballs. Astan manages to deflect 3, but the 4th slams right into Andes' gut, dropping him instantly. Astan keeps desperately swinging at the wolves without success, until Yuman screams that they need to retreat now because Andes is critically injured. Astan can't believe his team's falling apart yet again. The moment they get outside, he furiously turns to Guile, demanding to know why he didn't protect Andes properly. But Yuman jumps in, telling Astan that Guile's defensive magic actually worked perfectly. Without that barrier, Andes would have died on impact from the fireball. Frustrated, Astan tells Yuman to hurry up and heal Andes already, but she shakes her head and says it's impossible. Only elite healers or saints could manage injuries this severe without special preparations. Unless they get Andes to a hospital immediately, he won't make it. Later, Aston meets with Lord Fennel's servant, who bluntly informs him that Lord Fennel is deeply disappointed. Aston begs for another chance, convinced he can secure the fox fur if he just tries one more time. But the servant coldly reminds him it's already too late. Lord Fennel's daughter's birthday has come and gone, making the gift pointless now. The servant explains the reason Lord Fennel is angry isn't just because Aston's party failed. It's because Aston repeatedly assured him they'd deliver, even when he clearly couldn't. If Aston had just admitted from the start that the mission was impossible, Lord Fennel would have accepted that and found another gift for his daughter. But Aston kept promising he could get it done. For a moment, Aston tries shifting all the blame onto Xenos. But then it hits him he never officially registered Xenos as part of the Golden Phoenix party. So legally, Xenos was never even there, and Aston can't pin the blame on him. With no excuses left, Aston bows his head in humiliation and apologizes for all the trouble he caused. It burns him up inside to be bowing to a servant like this, but he swears he'll make up for it somehow. Lord Fennel's servant just scoffs, wondering out loud how Aston plans to do that when half of his team is practically dead already. Aston confidently promises that he'll find new members to rebuild the team, and next time Lord Fennel needs something done, Golden Phoenix will deliver. Lord Fennel's servant finally leaves, but Guile isn't sure about Aston's bold promises. They've got zero prospects for recruiting new, skilled adventurers, and there's no way the two of them alone could handle serious quests. Aston brushes off his concern, claiming he's got everything under control. Sure, he still doesn't think Xenos is worth much, but even he can't deny things went smoother with him around. So Aston decides they'll just bring Xenos back into the party. He's convinced Xenos must be desperate to rejoin Golden Phoenix, despite how badly he treated him. The next day, Aston and Guile hit the slums looking for Xenos. But they have no clue where to start searching, so Aston gets a bright idea. He'll just hire the 3 faction leaders from the slums to track down Xenos for him. He figures they'll do anything for money. A little later, Aston pays a lizardman to guide him to Zofia, one of the faction leaders. Aston tells her straight up that he has a job offer. Zofia's not really interested since it's cutting into her clinic hours, but she'll listen since he's a paying customer. Aston introduces himself as the leader of Golden Phoenix and says he's looking for a guy named Xenos, who should have shown up in the slums about 2 months ago. Zofia can't believe what she's hearing. Xenos already told her all about how Aston kicked him out of Golden Phoenix. She thought that was dumb enough, but she never imagined Aston would actually be stupid enough to come crawling back looking for him. She bluntly tells Aston to get lost. Xenos has way better things to do than deal with someone like him. Honestly, just looking at Aston makes her sick. Aston feels humiliated and considers attacking her for a second, but quickly realizes he'd get crushed, so he wisely backs off. Since Zofia won't help, Aston tries his luck with Linga's faction instead. But the moment Linga figures out who Aston is, she immediately tells him to leave. Aston's stunned to learn that Linga is also friends with Xenos, and just in case Aston's thinking about starting trouble, Linga reminds him coldly that she could step on him like a cockroach before he even blinks. Next, Aston decides to try his luck with Loa, but just like the others, she bluntly tells him to go screw himself. And if she catches wind that he's been bothering Xenos again, she personally promises to squish his skull right between her melons. Aston and Guile rush out of Loa's cave immediately. Aston can't wrap his head around why all the faction leaders care so much about Xenos. He tries convincing himself that they must be talking about some other guy named Xenos, because there's no way the Xenos he knows could ever be this influential. Right at that moment, Guile spots Xenos casually walking down the street with Lily. They'd just finished shopping and were about to head home when Aston suddenly calls out to Xenos. Xenos freezes for a second, stunned to see Aston and Guile again, but he isn't thrilled about it. He decides to just ignore them and walk away. Aston quickly stops him, loudly announcing he's here to welcome Xenos back to Golden Phoenix. But before Aston even finishes his sentence, Xenos firmly rejects the offer. Aston's in total disbelief. He honestly thought Xenos would jump at the chance to rejoin the party. But Xenos immediately lists every single horrible thing Aston put him through before, from terrible treatment to pathetic pay. As far as Xenos is concerned, there's zero reason to go back. Still, he tells Aston that if he's really desperate, he could consider joining them occasionally, but things won't be like before. Xenos refuses to work for scraps again. This time Aston needs to pay fair. He sets the price at 50,000 for basic healing and a full million for critical healing. And that's just for starters. Aston would need to cough up even more for Xenos' defensive magic and buffs. If Aston's not ready to pay, then there's nothing else to discuss. Xenos turns around to walk away again. Aston's pride kicks in, enraged that Xenos would dare refuse him. He impulsively draws his sword, planning to strike, but before he even moves, Krishna blasts him hard. She steps forward, shaking her head, reminding Aston it's incredibly stupid to openly attack someone right in front of a royal knight. Krishna originally came here just to see Xenos, but now she has to arrest Aston for attempted assault. Aston freaks out at the thought of prison and takes off running down the street. After dealing with all that chaos, Xenos and Lily finally head home. A bit later, Linga, Zofia, and Lo drop by to see Xenos. They tell him Aston tried hiring each of them to find him, even though all three turned him down instantly. Zofia's worried Aston won't stop there. If Aston gets desperate enough, he might try going to the illegal underground guild and hiring an assassin to get back at Xenos. Still, hiring assassins isn't cheap, and considering Aston came crawling to the slums instead of just recruiting new members, chances are he's broke anyway. But even with that reassurance, Zofia stays concerned. She mentions hearing rumors about a mysterious guy known as the Guide who supposedly takes on assassination jobs for free under special conditions. If Aston somehow convinces that guy, Xenos could be in real trouble. Later that night, Xenos is having a hard time sleeping, stressed from seeing Aston again. Carmilla notices he's still up, so she comes downstairs to check on him, genuinely worried. While they're talking, Carmilla brings up what she heard about Xenos learning healing magic in the slums. Xenos explains he was actually trying to bring a corpse back to life, and healing magic just kind of clicked for him after that. Carmilla reminds him resurrection magic is strictly forbidden, but Xenos honestly had no clue about that when he first attempted it. Talking about forbidden spells reminds Carmilla of something similar from when she was still alive. Back then, during the Demon Lord's era, artificial life like golems were created and frequently used in wars, all powered by dark, forbidden magic. Just then, Xenos hears loud noises coming from outside. Carmilla quickly offers to check it out, and when she steps outside, she's stunned. A large section of the slums is up in flames as a giant golem tears through the streets, causing total chaos. Turns out Aston really was base enough to hire someone to take Xenos out. But he was way too broke for regular assassins and ended up getting referred to the Guide instead. The Guide said he'd take the job free of charge, but he wanted to hear the whole story first to see if it was worth his time. After Aston laid everything out, the Guide found it hilarious how selfish and pathetic he was, but it sounded fun enough, and he's been itching to test out a new toy anyway. Back in the present, Xenos and Carmilla have just made it into town, and the damage looks even worse up close. Linga, Lo, and Zofia quickly join them, begging Xenos for help since so many people got hurt during the golem's rampage. Xenos asks if they have any clue where this thing came from, but they have no idea. The only lead they've got is that the golem showed up from somewhere deep in the slums, but that doesn't really clear anything up. Hearing that the golem appeared from deep within the slums, Xenos worries the underground guild might be involved, but right now, they don't have time to speculate. Instead, he tells everyone to round up the injured and get them to one spot so he can start healing. Once he's done taking care of that, he's determined to find whoever's behind this and make them pay for it. Meanwhile, from a safe distance, the Guide watches the chaos unfold and seems pretty satisfied with the golem's destructive power, though he thinks its speed could use a bit more work. Still, it's more than enough to handle the job he took. He doesn't know much about Xenos yet, but he's definitely excited to see how he'll react once his friends start dying around him. Back in the city, Linga, Lo, and Zofia quickly organize their troops, instructing them to find all the injured townspeople and bring them to Xenos. Once everyone's gathered up, Xenos prepares a healing spell, warning Carmilla to step back to avoid accidentally banishing her. He casts High Heal across the entire area, immediately making everyone feel better, and he tells them all to evacuate as soon as they can. Afterwards, Xenos walks around to heal anyone left out of the spell's range, but he's seriously pissed about the whole thing. Not only was he dragged out in the middle of the night, but he had to patch up hundreds of people with no guarantee he'll even see a dime for his trouble. He's gonna make the Golem Master pay dearly, but right now, he has no clue where the guy is or why he even unleashed all this chaos in the first place. Back with the Guide, he's surprised Xenos managed to heal every single person who got hurt, because he was sure at least a few people would bite the dust in all that chaos. Just looking at Xenos, it's clear he's a top-tier healer, but no matter how many people he patches up, that golem won't stop wrecking everything until someone takes it down for good. Xenos just finished healing everyone, and the town's already evacuated. but the golem is still going wild. Xenos wonders if maybe it'll just get bored and leave, but Carmilla shuts that idea down fast. She tells him golems never stop until they finish whatever job they were given. And this one's clearly ordered to flatten the entire slums, meaning it'll keep going until nothing's left. Still, the high-purity magic stones used to create golem cores were supposed to have been totally depleted during the Great War, so she's confused how someone even managed to find such rare items now. Xenos was hoping he could finally catch a break, but there's no way he can let this thing keep destroying the city, so he's got to deal with it himself before things spiral any further. The trio from Totally Spies step up, offering to join him, and Xenos checks if they're really okay with that since he might not have time to heal them if things go south. They know the risks perfectly well, but they still want to help protect their home. Xenos appreciates having backup, but they'll need a strategy, so he asks Carmilla how they're supposed to actually stop a golem. She tells him they'll have to destroy the magic stone that acts as the golem's core, or else it'll keep going forever. Xenos is kinda bummed hearing that, since he was hoping to snag the core intact and sell it off later for some easy money, but whatever. He tells everyone to hit the golem with everything they've got while he covers them. The trio rushes forward immediately. As they charge in, Xenos hits them with an agility buff to speed them up, and right as they're about to strike, he follows it up with a strength boost, giving them enough power to smash through the golem's leg. With one leg destroyed, the golem topples over and crashes to the ground, but the victory doesn't last long. That magic stone in its core allows the golem to regenerate endlessly, meaning it's far from over. The golem suddenly swats Linga aside, hitting her so hard she crashes straight through 3 houses before finally stopping. Under ordinary circumstances, every bone in her body would have shattered from that impact, but thanks to Xenos' magic, she's totally fine. It's been a while since Xenos jumped into a real fight like this, so he's a bit rusty, but he's quickly getting his groove back. He only gotta remember 2 things. First, he can't drift too far from the crew or his buffs start acting up. Second, since the healing speed and power buffs all need their own setup, he can't pop them all at once. He's gotta switch them around depending on what the situation calls for. After trading blows for a bit, Xenos notices the golem's regeneration is an instant, meaning if they deal enough damage quickly, they can immobilize it. He tells the girls to break both of the golem's legs at once, and when they do, the golem starts tipping over again, but there's a problem. Zofia suddenly spots a kid hiding in one of the houses, directly beneath the falling golem. Xenos can't cast defensive magic from this distance, so he sprints toward the girl, trying to save her from getting crushed. He doesn't reach her in time, and by all logic, the kid should have been flattened, but somehow, the golem stops itself right at the last second to avoid hurting her. Carmilla can't wrap her head around it, because as far as she knows, golems shouldn't even have the instinct to protect anyone. There must be something different about this one, and Xenos figures it out quickly after scanning it. Aston is trapped inside. Meanwhile, the guide is honestly impressed that Xenos connected the dots this quickly, but it won't really help him anyway. The magic crystal the guide used was defective, so he couldn't make a proper golem core. Instead, he decided to experiment using a human as a catalyst, and Aston made the perfect test subject. The guide tricked Aston and implanted the magic stone in his body, permanently fusing him with the golem. Now the guide's curious to see how Xenos handles this twist. Considering all the lives Xenos just saved, killing the golem won't exactly be easy for him. Xenos takes a deep breath and turns to the others, calmly telling them to clear out. The girls don't totally get why he's sending them off when they're this close to putting the golem down. But whatever Xenos figured out, he's clearly planning to finish this solo. Even if they're not sure what's going on, they trust his call and back off quick to give him space. After everyone else clears out, Xenos tells Aston it's finally time to settle things between them for good. Their relationship started back when Aston pulled Xenos out of the slums, but even then he always had selfish motives behind it. Still, just now, he chose to protect that kid, and it reminds Xenos of something Guile mentioned a while back. Aston's obsession with money and power all started after his little sister died because he couldn't afford a healer. Ever since he's chased wealth at all costs, and seeing that girl probably triggered the memory of his sister, causing him to act on instinct. That doesn't wipe away all the messed up stuff Aston's done, but it does make Xenos wonder if there might still be some tiny shred of humanity left in him. Either way, Aston clearly isn't in control of himself anymore, leaving Xenos with no real choice, so he pulls out his scalpel. Aston tries to squash him immediately, but Xenos dodges and quickly transforms his scalpel into a sword, slicing off both of Aston's golem arms. He then leaps into the air and slashes right through the golem's chest, exposing Aston's actual body. He's not exactly thrilled about doing this, but he can't let Astan keep causing chaos, so he delivers a clean slash across Astan's chest. From his hiding spot, the guide is surprised Xenos killed Astan so decisively. But then again, considering how much Astan mistreated Xenos, he figures revenge makes sense. But in reality, Xenos isn't trying to kill Astan at all. He's carefully destroying only the parts that are fused to the magic stone, while healing Astan at the same time to keep him alive. The guide is genuinely stunned that Xenos is capable of such precise control, especially after healing hundreds of people earlier. Personally, Xenos wouldn't mind if Astan dropped dead right here and now, but somebody's gotta foot the bill for all the damage caused tonight. And he knows Astan's too broke to cover the cost himself. There's no way Xenos will let him die until he snitches on whoever built this golem. Besides, even though Astan is a worthless jerk, Xenos can't deny that without that gold coin Astan gave him as severance, he never would have been able to save Lily or open his clinic in the first place. But most important of all, as a healer, Xenos swore to save as many lives as possible, and that includes Astan's sorry ass. Xenos raises his sword and delivers one last slash directly into the magic stone, shattering it completely and freeing Astan from the golem. Things finally calm down, and when Astan regains consciousness, he genuinely sees how incredible Xenos really is. He was partially aware while trapped inside the golem, so he clearly saw Xenos supporting the faction leaders during the fight, and he suddenly realizes Xenos must have been doing the same thing back when he was in Astan's party. Getting betrayed and used like a lifeless puppet made Astan finally see just how big of a jerk he's been, and he knows nothing he says can make up for all the messed up stuff he's done, but he still wants to apologize. Xenos can't stand seeing Astan grumbling and looking all pathetic, so he tells him to lift his head, not because he forgives him, but because he wants a clear shot before he goes home. He's been waiting forever to punch Astan right in the face, but hitting him while he was unconscious didn't feel fair. Now that Astan's awake, Xenos has no reason to hold back. He activates a 10x strength boost, walks up slowly, and throws the most satisfying punch of his life. Astan's knocked out cold, and when he eventually wakes up a few hours later, he sees Krishna standing right over him. She tells him she already ran into Xenos earlier, so she pretty much knows what went down here. Astan should consider himself lucky there weren't any deaths tonight, or else he'd be looking at murder charges. Still, Krishna's arresting him for plenty of other crimes, including property destruction, assault, and even public indecency, since Xenos' punch literally knocked every stitch of clothing right off him. Krishna also has a message from Xenos. She lets Astan know that Xenos took his sword while he was out. It was high-quality gear, so if Xenos sells it, it'll probably cover all the property damage Astan caused. Krishna adds one more thing, another message from Xenos, telling Astan to check his hand. When Astan opens it, he finds a single gold coin. Xenos left it as severance pay, along with a final request. He never wants to see or hear from Astan ever again. Astan just stares at the ground, completely defeated. He knows he deserves all this, but now he's really left with nothing. After everything he's been through today, Xenos is so drained he can barely stand up straight. The others are worried and offer to carry him back home, but Xenos tells them it's fine, knowing they're probably just as exhausted. Still, the girls insist on carrying him anyway, because Xenos always helps them out, and now it's their turn to return the favor. At the same time, back at the clinic, Carmilla already filled Lily in on everything that happened, so when Xenos finally gets home, Lily greets him warmly and offers to make him a nice cup of tea. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, it makes all the difference.